as with the tanks, we're going to be looking at armoured cars from about 1920 to 1935, because these are the types you probably would have used in War Plan Red. So the interwar period between 1920 and 1935 witnessed significant advancements in military technology. And British military and American military were no exception during this period. Armoured cars that were once thought to be a novelty began to play a more increasing role in evolving doctrine of mechanized warfare. And in this video, we're going to look at some of those developments and deployments of both British and American armoured cars during this period. So first up for the British is the Rolls-Royce armoured car. It came out in about 1920, and it marked the beginning of British interest in armoured vehicles post World War I. Introduced in 1920, it featured a Rolls-Royce chassis and a distinctive open-top design, and was armed with a single 303-inch Hotchkiss Mark I or Vickers machine gun. This armoured car pretty much became a symbol of British innovation and in the field of mechanised warfare during this time. Now, the next vehicle we're going to look at is the Morris Martel Tankette, which came out in 1929. Whilst it's not a traditional armoured car, the Morris Martel deserves a mention because of its unique design and role in the early exploration of armoured cars by the Brits. The Morris Martel was a tankette, a small tracked vehicle armed with a machine gun. Although its use was limited, the tankette concept would have influenced later armoured vehicle development and would be probably precursor to the Bren gun carrier. Next up is the Alvis Strausler AC-1, which came out in the 1930s, and it represented a departure from the traditional sort of open-topped armoured cars. And introduced in the 1930s, the AC-1 featured a fully enclosed armoured hull and improved cross-country mobility. It was armed with a 47mm anti-tank gun as well as a machine gun, and it demonstrated the British military's recognition of the need for a more versatile and heavily armoured vehicles. Roughly around the similar sort of time, the Crossley armoured car was developed, and the Crossley armoured car was a series that served the British military during the interwar years and demonstrated the ongoing evolution of the armoured vehicle. It was generally equipped with a turret-mounted machine gun. The Crossley armoured car offered increased protection and firepower compared with its predecessors. It played a role in a variety of colonial campaigns and policing duties during this interwar period. Next up is the Guy armoured car. And the Guy armoured car was another of those notable additions to the British military's armoured vehicle fleet during this period. It featured a more streamlined design and was armed with a 0.5-inch Vickers machine gun. The Guy armoured car was deployed in a variety of number of colonial conflicts and showcased advancements in both mobility and firepower. Next on our list is the Austin armoured car. Now, the Austin armoured car series was another one that contributed to Britain's military diverse array of armoured vehicles, with its distinctive polygonal turret and machine gun armament. The Austin armoured cars served in a plethora of roles, which included reconnaissance and patrolling duties. The period between 1920 and 1935 witnessed a transformative phase in development of armoured vehicles for the British. From the iconic sort of Rolls-Royce armoured car to those more advanced designs like the Alvis Strausler, the British military adapted its armoured car fleet to meet the evolving demands of modern warfare. These vehicles played crucial roles in colonial policing, reconnaissance and other operational contexts, setting the stage for more sophisticated armoured vehicles that would emerge in the lead up to the Second World War. The interwar years laid down the foundations for the integration of armoured cars into the broader mechanised forces that would shape the future of the military strategy and tactics that would see a great use of them during World War II. Now, the American armoured cars from this period is what we're going to look at now. In the aftermath of World War I, the United States military underwent quite a large transformative period marked by the exploration of mechanised warfare. Armoured cars, emblematic of this evolution, became integral to the sort of changing landscape of its military strategy. The armoured cars employed by the US military between 1920 and 1935 highlight key models and the contributions to the nation's military capabilities. Now, the first that we're going to look at is the M1918 armoured car. The M1918 armoured car, also known as the White armoured car, after its manufacturer, White Motor Company, was a significant step in the US military's foray into armoured vehicles. It was initially introduced during World War I. This armoured car featured a 37mm M1916 gun and a 30 caliber M1919 machine gun. Whilst it only saw limited action in Europe during the war, its design would go on to influence subsequent armoured vehicle development. Next on our list is the T1 armoured car. This was developed in the 1920s and marked a departure from the earlier models by introducing a fully enclosed hull for the crew. This design provided improved protection against small arms fire and environmental elements, and it was now armed with a 50 caliber machine gun. The T1 was an early attempt to balance firepower with mobility in armoured vehicles. The next armoured car we'll look at is the T-17. As the US military continued to explore armoured vehicle design, the T-17 armoured car emerged as a notable development in the early 1930s. It featured a 37mm M3 gun and a 30 caliber machine gun housed in a rotating turret. The T-17 showcased advancements in both mobility and firepower, reflecting the ongoing evolution of armoured vehicle technology at the time. Next up is the T-7 armoured car. This was introduced in the mid-1930s and it featured a 37mm M1A1 gun and a 30 caliber M1919 machine gun. It represented a further step in the US military's efforts to modernise its armoured forces. The T-7 was part of a series of experimental designs that were aimed to enhance the mobility, whilst at the same time adding more protection and firepower to the armoured vehicles. The period between 1920 and 1935 marked a dynamic era in the development of armoured cars for the US military. Everything from the M1918 right through to experimental T-17, these vehicles played a crucial role in shaping the mechanised capability of the US Army. As the military grappled with the challenges and opportunities presented by armoured warfare, these early armoured cars set the stage for more advanced and diverse fleet that would emerge in the lead up to World War II. The interwar years were quite a pivotal time for laying down the foundation for the integration of armoured vehicles into the broader spectrum of the US military. We're all kind of familiar with the sort of World War II armoured cars of both the British and American, and a lot of them with the British sort of went towards the sort of light tank on wheels, and Americans developed things like half tracks, the Greyhound and stuff like that. But it was these early developments from using a car chassis like the Rolls-Royce and building on it led to further developments as they went along to what we saw in World War II. Now, for the Red War Plan, you're not going to have the World War II stuff. You're going to be using this early interwar period stuff. Now, if you're going to do a long campaign over several years, you could bring in those later vehicles, you know, as a sort of midway point, so say in your campaign, because obviously it's a war, so military technology would have sped up, and those vehicles would have been brought out anywhere, even in the conflict of if they were against the Brits, that those vehicles, and likewise the British vehicles would have come out. The technology would have increased exponentially because of the war. So anyway, that's all for Armoured Cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.